Vechain has seen significant growth over the past year and a half. With a recent 36% pullback, what is next for VET? Guys, in this video, we're going to dive into the world of Vechain and specifically the technical analysis on VET. If you find this video useful and informative, hit the like button. I really do appreciate that. If you are new to the channel, then do subscribe, tap the bell, select all notifications, and in doing so, you will stay up to date with everything that we do here. Right, with that said, done out of the way, let's dive into this technical analysis on Vechain. We're going to start things off with this weekly chart, guys, to talk about the 5 impulse waves that are moving to the upside. Everything is intact, and we want to just want to reassure you that we are looking at another 760% gains in the very near future. We can see that things started back in March of 2020, and they kind of peaked out with wave 3 up in April of 2021. This was a 399-day move that saw 18,295% in gains. Very lucrative. That I'm pretty certain no bank will offer you that. We did see the fourth wave correction take us down into a nice accumulation zone where we're accumulating VET ahead of where we are going in this fifth wave. We can see that we are aiming for $1, and this is backed up by the current performance. We take the high of wave 3, the low of wave 4, and that is showing us a good $1.01 area to be peaking out to during the peak of the bull run. To be clear, guys, I'm not saying that we're going to go up to that kind of dollar level in the next 24 to 48 hours. Instead, that will be the peak of the bull run, which could be December or even into early 2022. Overall, we are looking at 766% in gains, and I do think that is very achievable. We have to bear in mind that market capitalization is no barrier to price discovery, and the only things that we require are going to be the squeeze on the supply and, of course, the demand for the token. So overall, if we can get those two things controlled, we should see a pretty good price spike here for VET. Right, we can also take a look at the stochastic RSI here. We can see that we were oversold during the bottom of wave 1 during the market crash in March 2020. Overbought when we got to the top of wave 1, oversold for wave 2, and overbought again for wave 3. There was a little bit of volatility in here as we started to see a bit of a correction in the middle, this section just here. And then we went back up, peaking out, and then we saw the fourth wave correction. Number 4 actually came in, gained oversold for quite some time before coming back up into the overbought area with wave 5. Now we can see there's a slight pullback most recently. Again, this is something that's not too uncommon. We have seen this with wave 3, but again, we'll be coming back up here shortly, and we'll be basically tracking this overbought area for a couple of months or so, I would have thought. Overall, nothing kind of major to report with the structure of our weekly. Everything is lined up quite nicely. The 36% pullback is not uncommon. This is something that we see quite a bit. We've seen this kind of level of correction multiple times depending on where you are in the market. A good example will be during our third wave here. We can see that we actually dropped down in the space of a couple of weeks, this area here, 38%. So a deeper correction before we even continued the surge to the upside there. Again, there was another one in the middle here over a couple of week period. We actually saw a 43% drop in the middle of wave 3. So again, not uncommon, and we still saw a very significant price spike to the upside. So it's best not to get discouraged, but instead rely on the data that we can see what's happened previously and what our expectations are next. These 5 impulse waves to the upside are still intact. They have not been invalidated. For example, wave 4 never went as low as wave 1, so that's perfectly fine. Wave 2 was flat. Wave 4 was sharp. Again, those two are always opposites to each other, so they're not going to, be the same or anything like that. There's nothing here that is basically indicating that we've invalidated our 5 impulse waves, and all the rules are still intact. Everything looks like it's moving up towards that $1 level, and that should be pretty fantastic. In my opinion, as many of you know, Vechain should be a top 10 cryptocurrency for everything that they're doing in the world. If you're unfamiliar with what Vechain are actually doing, then I do encourage you to do a lot more research, because I'm not a financial advisor. Chris is not a financial advisor. There's no one who's going to be doing that research for you except for yourself. So basically go out there, get into it all. There are a lot of use cases, lots of partnerships, lots of integrations, lots of real world use case for Vechain, and some of the FUD that's out there just isn't true. So do some solid research, dig into it, and you will be pleasantly surprised, I believe. Let's jump down into our daily, and here we're going to take a look at what's going on most recently with the price action. We can see that wave 3 was very good. Just up here, taking us to about 28 cent. If I actually just hover above here, we can see it came in at 27.9. We can see that the low areas came in, right? We had this one wick really pulling us down nice and sharp in May. This got us down as low as 5.2 cents. So we dropped significantly, right? This was our accumulation point. As we said, we wick into here, but we didn't really get too much action or too many opportunities to buy at a dip too much. But this was a huge accumulation period. We dropped down here for a couple of days before we then started to go on nice and heavy to the upside with the correction wave. Okay, so everything's looking pretty tidy from that kind of perspective. And we can also see that there was another opportunity just recently here to again get into a bigger position for Vechain. Now, ultimately, when we were down at the bottom here, we were oversold, and then we pushed up nice and strong into this overbought area for quite a few days. We were calling for a pullback, and that's what we saw here, which was actually perfectly. That's all we needed to see actually occur. And then we had Bitcoin get pulling the entire market down with it, which is unfortunate because we were actually lining things up nicely for that move. With that being said, though, that has now put us into a nice oversold area on the daily and allows us to continue that growth to the upside overall. But I do expect there to be volatility on the smaller time frame still. I don't think we're quite ready to continue the push to the upside yet, and I'm going to get into that in a moment. But ultimately, I think there's going to be volatility on the smaller time frames, and if we are concerned about that, it's important that we do zoom out and we really pay attention to what is going on with the larger time frames, because that's where it gives you the better structure for where we are going for the bull run. We can sometimes get lost in the smaller time frames, but I am going to go through it and to make sure everyone is prepared for what potentially is on the horizon next for Vechain. So ultimately oversold right now, looking for a good push on our daily. And so at this point, I am going to dive into the advice.io dashboard, where they use artificial intelligence and machine learning to help us understand the underlying value of a cryptocurrency. And it takes a look at different indicators, and maybe there's something here that we need to be aware of that could be concerning for the short term. And as we get into this, we have identified some issues when it comes to Vechain. Ultimately, they have actually dropped it. The artificial intelligence has dropped it down a rating, right? We've dropped to B2 in the last 24 hours. And this is basically a reasonable amount of fear that has been in the space for Vechain. This is something that we spoke about recently as well. And basically, there is fear up for sale when it comes to Vechain. We can see this is at a C3, which means it's extremely fearful right now. So there is an opportunity in that to basically buy up that fear at a discounted rate, in my opinion. And again, I'll get into what is going on with a smaller time frame in a moment. We can also see the AMI had ratios in A2, so there's no problems with liquidity for Vechain. So that's an interesting tell as well. Although there is a lot of fear in the space and we have dropped down a rating, the liquidity has been unaffected by it. The sharp ratios and the A2 rating, we actually are increasing the gap on the 50-day average. So risk reward ratios actually in favor of holding Vechain. So that's also a very interesting tell. We can see that the moving average here is at a C2 rating, so that is also affecting our overall rating. We need to improve on the averages and those moving averages, but they will come in due course. But we have had a significant pullback, so it's understandable that these are being affected. The profitability, on the other hand, is the best it can be with an A1 rating, and like I said, 18,000% gains isn't something that you're going to find from a standard bank, for example. So a very, very profitable project to have invested in. That being said, I am expecting the short-term volatility on the back of this, and I think that is exactly what this artificial intelligence and machine learning is trying to indicate to us. There is a lot of fear in the space for Vechain, so we are expecting some kind of pullback in line with that. We can see that the moving averages have been affected by the recent moves as well, and we should be preparing ourselves for any potential pullbacks. But we're going to have a look at the hourly to see if that is going to be indicating anything for us on of concern. So what we're going to do is jump down into our hourly now. And for me, this is actually quite an interesting thing because we are fighting this resistance line just here. We can see that we're tracking on the downside to this. But there is also the upward trend, right, from our previous low point down here through to where we actually tapped recently. Now, the other thing that we have to bear in mind is that we are heading to the oversold area. We can, of course, pull back from here and go into the oversold area before pushing to the upside. That being said, there are a couple of things I think is important that we note. Although the artificial intelligence is saying that there's a lot of fear up for sale, if people are starting to be aware that actually things technically are lining up quite nicely for a good push to the upside, and there is a certain amount of vet up for sale due to fear, that actually we might see a break to the upside, okay, which is contrary to what the AI is telling us. But if we think about how traders might interpret this data, we should be considering all potential outcomes. And the reason that I say this is there is the downward trend. There is also a support line, and this forms a triangular wedge just here. Okay, so as we pull back to our support right now, we could potentially be finding ourselves getting wedged into this nice and tight and have that explosion to the upside. With that being said, though, if we do lose this support line, then the anticipation would be to pull back down towards 11.2 cent down here. And that would be very much in line with what the artificial intelligence is indicating to us. Okay, there's a certain amount of fear for sale. And if we do lose that support, then the expectation would be to pull down towards our upward trend line and our support of 11.2 cent. Okay, that would take us into a very nice oversold area on the stochastic, ready for a huge push to the upside afterwards. So overall, two things could happen here. One is we could see experienced traders identifying the triangular wedge and basically saying that actually there's a reasonable amount of fear for sale during this fifth wave. We could buy that up and actually take this thing to the next level. Or the artificial intelligence might be onto something in the underlying data that actually says it's weakening quite significantly and we could lose this support line here. And if we do lose this support, the expectation should be that we go down to 11.2 cent. Okay, so in the next few hours, we're going to identify which one of these is holds, right? If the support holds well, then I do expect us to push up to the upside in a very explosive way. If, however, we lose the support, then the AI is right and we are actually dropping down to these lower bounds. Okay, so the next few hours will tell. If we get a closed candle below our trend, our support line here of 11.5, then the expectation will be to pull back significantly. Okay, we are in an interesting area on the stochastic though, where we cannot drop down into the oversold area for too long of a period. So whatever happens here next should be pretty rapid. It should happen very fast, and we should be able to move out of here probably within the next little while as well. Okay, overall, the downward trend and the upward trend do come together by the 16th. So we are talking about a day or so before one way or another we are moving to the upside or the downside in a big way. Overall, I think this is going to be short-lived and we should see that volatility hopefully move out of the space as we continue the push to the upside overall in the longer term. Hopefully, guys, you're not going to get too concerned. If you are, then do zoom out. It's important that we really focus in on what is going on with our weekly. It gives us the biggest structure overall and how things are kind of playing out towards our dollar level for VET. Overall, I'm not seeing any concerns on this larger time frame. Obviously, just expect volatility on the smaller time frame for a little bit longer, in my opinion. Guys, I'm going to leave that there. Hopefully, you have found this video useful and informative. If you have, hit the like button. I really do appreciate that. If you are new to the channel, then do subscribe, tap the bell, select all notifications, and in doing so, you will be kept up to date with absolutely everything that we do here. With this being said, done and out of the way, I hope everyone has a fantastic day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.